Hey everyone, Tony Winston here for Jazz Piano College, and I had a really great question from one of my Patreon subscribers about the diminished scale. And basically the question is which diminished scale do you use where, and does it start with a whole step or a half step? And officially, the diminished scale starts with a whole step. So I'm going to stay in the key of C mostly here. We have our 2 chord, and then we have our 5 chord. And we're going to put a flat 9 on that 5 chord, and I'm going to move that flat 9 down to here and not even play the root. I'm just going to play that, and there it is. It's a diminished chord, all right? And, you can use that as your 5 chord. D minor, G7 without the root, and C major. Or you could do it down here. D minor, G7 without the root, and it is a diminished chord what I'm playing here. It's an A flat diminished or F diminished or D diminished or B diminished. You can call it by any one of those names, because as you invert this chord, it just stays the same. And whatever on the bottom, you could call that the root. And then we end up on C. D minor, we're going to stay on the white keys because this is Dorian mode. Unless we want to do passing tones. Wiggle your shoulder like that. And then we're going to do G7 either like this or with the flat 9. And I'm going to use the diminished scale that starts on one of these notes. All right, D, F, A flat, or B. And I will start with a whole step. The diminished scale comes from the diminished chord. All right, I'm starting on the A flat, go a whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. And many times, it'll just end up in the right place. This is one reason why the diminished scale is so good to use. There's 8 notes in the scale rather than 7, and it just seems to work out. So now I'm going to the diminished scale here. See? Now, sometimes you'll have a progression that just is a diminished chord. Like, for instance, you're in C, and it goes to C sharp diminished, and then to D minor. Now, you could say that that's actually an A 7th, but suppose that, the chart just says C sharp diminished. Well, start on any one of those notes and go a whole step up. And by the way, any of those whole steps up from a chord tone, like there's a chord tone, right? E, and you go a whole step. You can add that to the chord. You can add it to the chord. In fact, there's lots of great songs that do this. A song I'm going to be putting up a video about, Come Fly With Me, does this. It goes like... Right there is a diminished chord, E flat diminished, and see a whole step above one of the chord tones is a D. And so right away you can see where the whole step is going to be in this diminished scale. So you'll have half steps on either side of it, right? But the whole step is there. Come fly with me. All right, so I just used the right diminished scale there, right? And then if the next chord is G7, right, you can use the diminished chord and just go a whole step, if you're going up. Now, I guess if you're starting on a chord tone and you're going to go down, you got to start with a half step. Okay. Now, so the 2 places you can use the diminished scale is on diminished chords and dominant 7th chords that have a flat 9 because of the presence of that diminished chord within the chord. Let me also show you a kind of another way of visually looking at the scale. All right, here's G7. I don't even have to play the flat 9, right? I could still play the diminished scale. I'm going to start on the flat 9 and go a whole step. Or I can start on the 3rd, the 5th, or the 7th and go a whole step. All right, 5th, 7th. But the root, if I want to start on the root, I've got to go a half step first, because the scale I'm using is A flat diminished, or the diminished scale. So look at the scale. Look at these notes, right? The chord's G. The top 4 notes there are the notes you would expect in any G scale that has a dominant chord there, right? You're not going to play that. You're going to play this. And this part is like the Mixolydian mode, they call that. It's just a major scale with a flat 7. Instead of that, it's this. Right? That's the flat 7. That's just the regular 7. So the top 4 notes, if you're playing a dominant 7th chord, the top 4 notes coming down like this is going to be part of the diminished scale. Also the tritone, or the flat 5, is part of it. And then this little piece. Right. So in any key, C, there's the little piece, there's the tritone, and there's the top 4 notes of the scale. Now, let me think if I can think of a good key to do this next little trick in here. Well, let's just do it on G 7th. So, top 4 notes. Think a tritone away, and do the same thing on D flat there. So you got G, top 4 notes, and D flat, top 4 notes. Sorry. And that's the diminished scale. See? And, years ago when I took jazz piano lessons from the great teacher Ted Howe, told me to practice it something like this. I think I was going like just playing the root, the 3rd, and the 7th, and starting on the flat 9 and doing diminished scales. Maybe I played the root too, like that. And then you go to F, start on the flat 9. And then B flat. I can't see what I'm doing here. And then when you get to E flat, you're really back to the same scale that you did on C. All right, because there are only 3 diminished scales because of the symmetry of the pattern. As soon as you get to there, the scale just starts to repeat itself, right? So, C diminished scale, E flat diminished scale, F sharp diminished scale, all the same thing, A diminished. Okay, think of anything else I can talk about here in the diminished scale. I was going to make this a short video, but it's turning out to be kind of long. Rootless voicings. A typical rootless voicing is like this, but if you flat the 9 on it, you get what I call box 3, and if you want to check out my playlists down there, you can find stuff about rootless voicings where I talk about these different shapes. Very useful. So this would be a C 7th. There's the 7th, the flat 9, the 3rd, and the 13. And all those notes are in the diminished scale that you would use for C dominant 7th. Remember, dominant 7th, start on the flat 9, or the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, and go a whole step. All right? Now, you can move these chords around in thirds as well, and the scale. And also, if you leave this note out and just do this, then, this scale will fit this chord will fit a couple other scales as well. So a 3-note version is nice. And you hear Chick Corea doing stuff like that all the time, that kind of thing. I think I messed one of them up there. But, right? Look, C, diminished scale. It's got part of the blues in it right there. So if you think blues in C, in A, in F sharp, and E flat, all that is in the diminished scale, and it would work in a 2-5-1 if you had time to play all that. Like, here's the 2 chord, and then here's the 5 chord. All right, it's too much, obviously, but all right, do the E flat and the C. All right. Now try something else. Sorry. So using the top 4 notes of an F sharp scale, top 4 notes of an E flat scale, always with the flat 7. All right, and let me tell you, there's like zillions of patterns that are built off of this diminished concept. There's these chords. There's stuff like this. All right, I'm starting to sound like Peter Martin here, going way too fast. See, it's just that same chord I'm talking about. Like that, see? No offense, Peter. You're a great teacher. I've learned a lot from you. Little plug for Open Studio out there. They got more subscribers than me now, so that's okay. One thing about this channel that I really like is everybody that subscribes and puts comments down there. It's all very relevant. It's not just a bunch of chit chat, and so I can read almost every comment and usually respond to most of them. So I kind of like that. If the channel ever gets to like 1 million subscribers, which it won't, then I won't be able to keep up with comments and things. So please keep those comments coming. I hope this video will straighten out any questions you may have about the diminished scale. It really is a very important one, especially for kind of straight ahead traditional jazz. All right, I'm just going to mess around a little bit more with the diminished scale, and then I'll see y'all later. Well, let's see. Looking for patterns. Thank you, folks.